Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the first portfolio this afternoon is Deputy First Minister's Responsibilities, Economy and Gaelic. And at question number 1, I call Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussion the Economy Secretary has had with business leaders regarding work to maximise the economic impact of Edinburgh's festival.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, we're always working with Edinburgh's festivals to maximise those economic opportunities to complement the year-round efforts of each of these flagship cultural events. Alongside the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society, I convened a roundtable on Friday, 22nd of August, with business, data, diplomatic leaders, exploring how we can collectively maximise the Fringe's economic impact. And with last month's outstanding Edinburgh Festival programmes in mind, I congratulate the artists, the performing companies, the production teams, supporting staff and everyone whose work makes Edinburgh's festivals a global cultural highlight.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank the Deputy First Minister for the answer. We know how important our cultural and creative sectors are to the economy and how they can drive growth. In her meeting with businesses following Edinburgh's festival, did the Deputy First Minister highlight the benefits of investing in culture and corporate sponsorship of cultural events? Will she commit to further engagement to support private investment in our cultural and creative sectors?
Deputy First Minister.
The short answer is yes, I do commit to ongoing engagement. And Faisal Chowdhury identifies a number of different funding sources. The Scottish Government has obviously provided funding to support the Fringe this year, but around that table there were comments being made from international leaders in particular about how much their own governments invest in supporting those that are performing from their nations at the Fringe, highlighting the fact that this is a global phenomenon and we are very proud to continue to support it.
A supplementary, Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scotland's festivals are a vital part of our cultural landscape, a boost to tourism and an important part of our regional economies. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about how Scottish Government is working to support festivals in the wider cultural sector in Scotland through the increased funding in the 2025-26 Scottish Budget?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, as a result of the biggest increase in culture funding in the history of the Parliament, Scotland's festivals have benefited from significant increases in core funding through Creative Scotland's multi-year funding programme. And a third of funding recipients run a festival, and a number of those are receiving multi-year funding for the first time. Last month, we also announced the creation of an expanded festivals fund. The application process opened today, Wednesday the 3rd of September. It's administered by Creative Scotland and it supports non-profit arts and cultural festivals across Scotland. The £1.8 million fund will provide up to £200,000 in grants per festival in its first year to those not already in receipt of Festival Expo funding.
Supplementary, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. Such is the success of Edinburgh's festivals that at one point last month, Edinburgh was the most expensive destination in the world for people to visit. And there are concerns in the industry about the perception of Scotland as a high-cost destination. Would the Deputy First Minister agree with the evidence we heard in the Economy Committee this morning that councils need to take that into account? Councils like Edinburgh need to take that into account when considering setting the visitor levy, which is coming down the track.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the member is right to highlight the overall costs of the festivals, and accommodation costs being one of the biggest challenges across the Fringe ecosystem, as it were, because it affects artists, visitors and residents. And one of the priority areas for the strategic partnership for Scotland's festivals that is led by Angus Robertson is to look at that issue in greater detail. The member will also be aware of some of the wider support for artists, particularly the Keep It Fringe fund, which is administered to reduce financial barriers for artists performing at the Fringe. And we need to look more broadly at what to do in order to keep the Fringe accessible to as many artists as possible.
Question number 2 has been withdrawn. At question number 3, I call Daniel Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it has taken on digital exclusion to address the weakened national leadership referred to by Audit Scotland in its report Tackling Digital Exclusion, which was published 12 months ago.
Minister Richard Lochhead.
The Government welcomes the report and is working with local government to take action on digital exclusion. Our approach has evolved since the pandemic, but our commitment remains firm. We are tackling root causes of digital exclusion while developing sustainable ways to mitigate its impact. A refreshed digital strategy developed with COSLA will set a national direction, followed by an action plan with measurable outcomes. We are embedding inclusion into public services, ensuring that access is not an afterthought as well. And we will continue to lead cross-sector collaboration, including through the Digital Inclusion Alliance, addressing digital exclusion as a national priority.
Daniel Johnson.
While she may not be answering the question, may I just take this opportunity to say I was saddened that the Deputy First Minister won't be returning at the next election. She will be missed by this Parliament. According to the Lloyds Consumer Index, 15% of adults lack foundational digital skills and 9% of households have no internet access. That's not just digital exclusion, it's exclusion from healthcare, education and democracy. But 12 months on from the report, we've not had a strategy. Indeed, the SCVO has withdrawn from working with the Scottish Government because, I quote, they fundamentally disagree with the direction of travel. And despite £764,000 coming from the UK Government's £9.5 million Digital Innovation Fund, there are no plans from the Scottish Government on how it plans to spend that money. So will the Minister set out how they tackle digital exclusion, and how will they spend that £764,000 coming to them?
Minister.
We welcome the fact that the UK Government are now taking action on digital exclusion, and we want to work with them on that and welcome the resource that will come to Scotland as part of the budget mentioned by the member. Once that cash is with us and we work out with the likes of COSLA and other sectors on the refresh strategy I referred to, that will be put to good use on top of the existing budget for Connecting Scotland. It's already underway and being spent tackling this. But we do have to find new ways, because the member's quite right, a 15% gap is 15% too much, and especially in this day and age when AI and other technologies are becoming increasingly important, and everyone should have the same opportunity to take advantage of the digital world in which we now live. And it's important that we have the voluntary sector, business community and government, public sector all working together on this. That's the solution, I believe, going forward. That will be at the heart of the new strategy. I very much welcome the partnership just announced, I think it was just last week, between Virgin Media, O2 and the Citizens Advice Bureau. And the Scottish Government assisted that partnership, which is going to deliver thousands of free smartphones to vulnerable groups within Scotland. And that shows what can be achieved by working together. So we have to certainly support that going forward.
And supplementary, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Keeping Scotland at the forefront of digital literacy and innovation is a priority that will enable Scotland to pioneer the industries of the future. So can the Minister say more about Scotland's upcoming Innovation Week and how we can maintain this momentum for both our economy and also our society?
Minister.
Well, the member raises a good point. I'm very excited by Scotland's first National Innovation Week that's taking place later this month. I hope members pay attention to that. It will be displaying and showcasing a lot of the amazing innovation underway throughout every single corner of Scotland. And digital inclusion is an important area that can be supported by digital innovations. And of course, I have met many companies over the last couple of years working on new devices, software, etc., that can benefit people who are sometimes a bit harder to reach. And I think the member raises a very important dimension to National Innovation Week in Scotland's track record and pedigree in innovation.
Question number 4, Elena Whistler.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the recently published NatWest Group and Beauhurst's new Startup Index, indicating that Scotland has one of the fastest growing startup economies in the UK.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I am hugely encouraged by the NatWest New Startup Index that shows Scotland's strong performance in business formations. Scotland saw a 17.9% growth in new business incorporations compared to 2024, demonstrating significant momentum in the startup economy. We are by far the fastest growing startup economy in the UK and one of the fastest growing in Europe. And that growth is not accidental. It is thanks to sustained investment and focus by this government and policy choices like the TechScaler programme, alongside the ambition and the hard work of Scotland's innovators and entrepreneurs, who should be enormously proud of themselves.
And then a question.
Does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that this report shows that Scotland is the fastest growing start-up economy in the UK and one of the fastest growing in Europe, with investment growing by 120% in just over 4 years? And that this remarkable progress has been achieved by forward-thinking Scottish Government policies in the face of Brexit damaging trade and labour markets and successive UK governments failing to deliver the investment that Scotland needs, especially in rural communities such as mine in Carrickcumnock and Doon Valley, where all and any opportunities such as positive growth from this is very much welcome.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, it's certainly encouraging to see this output from the work that we've been undertaking over the last few years to change our enterprise support from being quite generic to instead vastly improve the scale and the quality of infrastructure that's tailored to high-growth founders. Scotland's transformation into one of Europe's fastest-growing start-up economies is a testament to that ambition, the resilience and the innovation of our people and our businesses. The 120% growth in investment over just 4 years isn't just impressive, it's a clear signal that our forward-thinking policies have delivered real results. And that's working in partnership with a number of different organisations, kicked off, of course, by Scotland's first chief entrepreneur, Mark Logan.
Question number 5, Jamie Halker-Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government what analysis is undertaken on the impact of increased taxation by the United Kingdom, Scottish and local governments on people and businesses across the Highlands and Islands.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
Ministers have regular discussions with their colleagues on a range of issues that have an economic impact, including growth and taxation. In terms of recent tax rises, of most concern to us is the additional burden created by the UK Government's decision to change employers' national insurance rates and thresholds. This will undoubtedly be having an impact on businesses in the Highlands and Islands and across Scotland, and the UK Government's own economic impact assessment confirmed these changes will result in lower employment and higher costs for businesses across the UK.
Jamie Halker-Johnson.
Businesses across the region are facing growing pressures on their bottom line with increased energy costs, regulation and tax bills. Meanwhile, their customer spend is impacted by the cost of living issues, as well as ongoing increases in their own taxes, most notably council tax. In Orkney, 2 popular local hospitality businesses announced before the summer that they're closing their doors. Others I spoke to during my summer tour of the Highlands and Islands were clear. They're not sure that their businesses, even with the huge effort and sacrifices owners and staff often put in, are sustainable in the long term. And they don't feel that the Scottish Government, or UK or local governments for that matter, truly understand the real crisis facing our restaurants, pubs and bars, nor the devastating impact of policies being wrought on the sector. So does the Minister recognise their concerns? And if he does, what will the Scottish Government do to better support our hospitality businesses?
Minister.
Can I say at the outset, as a member who represents a constituency within the member's region, I'm very familiar with some of the issues and concerns of my local businesses, and these are reflected throughout the Highlands and Islands and indeed many parts of Scotland. And I certainly absolutely recognise the pressures facing many of those, particularly smaller businesses, at the moment. And indeed, the First Minister and the Chamber of Commerce in Scotland just have made representations to the UK Government in terms of their forthcoming budget and to ensure that measures come out of that to alleviate the massive pressures on businesses. The businesses I speak to do talk to me largely about national insurance contributions, VAT and tourism, a range of other issues that, of course, are the responsibility of the UK Government. Of course, likewise, in Scotland, we have to take those pressures into account, as do local authorities, in terms of some of their decisions in the coming months as well, to pay attention. I should also say that the Deputy First Minister, of course, raised some really exciting statistics in terms of new businesses being created in Scotland, with record-breaking increases in the first 6 months of this year compared to the first 6 months of last year. And a pleasant surprise from those statistics was that the sector with the biggest representation and increase of new businesses was hospitality. So clearly it's patchy across the country, and that's not to talk down the very real pressures facing the hospitality sector at the moment, which is from a variety of areas. But I speak to these businesses very regularly, and I want to congratulate the Pier, a new cafe in the hospitality sector in Lossiemouth, which has just opened in the last couple of months. And there's new businesses out there doing a great job against very tough backdrops, and we should congratulate them for resilience.
Thank you, Minister. I call by way of supplementary Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Spiralling energy costs and Labour's national insurance hike are squeezing the public sector and businesses alike and limiting an ability to grow and invest. So does the Minister agree with me that Labour must urgently abandon this tax on jobs? And can he say any more about the support the Scottish Government is offering to businesses in Scotland's Highlands and Islands? Minister.
I join Emma Ruddock in terms of her appeal to the UK Labour Government, who, when they were first elected, said they had a mission of growth, and yet they went on to introduce an increase in tax for businesses, which is causing real problems. And if I had £1 for every time a business raises this with me, I'd be a very, very rich person. It's such a huge issue. It's the biggest issue, perhaps equivalent to energy, being expressed by small businesses and businesses throughout Scotland at the moment. And I really do appeal to the Labour Party to take that on board in the forthcoming budget. It's crippling businesses the length and breadth of Scotland, rising energy costs when they were promised lower energy costs, and rising business costs when they were promised a mission of growth.
Question number 6, I call Tim Eagle, who is joining us remotely. Mr Eagle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on how growth deals are growing the economy of the Highlands and Islands region.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the substantial £242.5 million that we are investing in 4 growth deals across the Highlands and Islands will empower and enable regional partners to deliver a wide range of projects tailored to local needs and circumstances. Those projects have been chosen by local partners for their areas and will deliver infrastructure, housing, skills, transport and innovation to drive economic growth at a local and a regional level and secure lasting benefits.
Tim Eagle.
The growth deals are delivering jobs, infrastructure and a certainty in investments, much of which was highlighted in the recent Economy and Fair Work Committee report. However, current levels of inflation remain an ongoing concern. There is also scope to further extend the benefits of the growth deals in areas like Murray by ensuring a fair split of any just transition funds and actively supporting other projects along the energy corridor between Aberdeen and the Green Freeport in Invergordon. Can the Government confirm it is monitoring the effects of inflation and its impact on projects, and also ensure that the just transition funding which impacts Murray and has the potential to expand the projects in the area under the growth deal is split fairly between the 3 council areas?
Deputy First Minister.
So the member raises a number of important issues which are quite high in my list of priorities. He talks about the impact of inflation, and we remain very closely involved with each of the growth deals to understand what is affecting progress, particularly in and around infrastructure. He also talked about some of the other schemes like the Just Transition Fund, and it's long been my view that growth deals established a different way of operating, where it was a tripartite arrangement between the Scottish Government, the UK Government and local authorities that has worked really well, and therefore is a great model, I think, going forward. There's obviously been a number of calls for a second phase of growth deals, and we're very happy to continue to engage with the other 2 parts of that tripartite arrangement, the UK Government and local authorities, to look at how we progress that. But he's right in talking about funding that's available right now, which can be delivered in response to applications that are made. And we could go into some detail about the various projects that have benefited from Just Transition funding already, but I've been really impressed by what local partners have delivered with the funding that they have received.
On supplementary, Alistair Allen.
I apologise, Presiding Officer, for being slightly late getting to the Chamber. With the Islands Growth Deal now in its delivery phase, positive outcomes are already evident, such as the recent completion of the £2.3 million UHI North Western Hebrides Campus Transformation Project. Could the Government give an update on some of the many other ways where, working in conjunction with the deal, the Scottish Government continues to support the growth of economies across the Highlands and Islands?
Deputy First Minister.
There is a long list that's probably too long to go into in this question and answer session, but I'm more than happy to give Mr Allen chapter and verse in writing. But it could include our allocation of over £56 million to Highlands and Islands Enterprise this financial year to support its work with businesses and communities across the region. We've also approved £7.5 million of funding to support community investments, helping 30 community anchor organisations to provide vital services for their communities. We've got the £33.7 million to develop Stornoway Deepwater Port on the Isle of Lewis. That's a key piece of infrastructure which is needed to optimise opportunities from tourism and renewable energy for the islands, and it's estimated by Scottish Futures Trust to have the capability capability of unlocking between £5 billion and £7 billion over the next decade. And then, of course, there is direct investment specific to our islands in this year's budget, including £9 million to island-focused investments, in addition to continued support across portfolios like transport, housing and health. As I said, it's a very long list, and I'm more than happy to give Mr Allen that in writing.
Question number 7, I call Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its discussions with the GFG Alliance, Liberty Steel and Alvan's British Aluminium regarding the company's operations in Scotland.
Minister Ivan McKee.
Scottish Government are in regular contact with management at Alvan's British Aluminium, Liberty Steel, DL and the wider GFG Alliance. The Lochaber businesses are performing well, employing over 200 people, making significant contributions to both the local and Scottish economies. GFG remains committed to the future of the DL plant and have firm plans to restart operations in the near future after securing a contract for 40 kilotonnes of plate for maritime use. I will be providing a statement to Parliament next week to set out further details on the Scottish assets and our discussions with GFG on their future.
Willie Rennie.
There will be scepticism in Lochaber and Lanarkshire, as we've had so many false dawns before. At the smelter, we were promised a wheel-making plant, 2,000 jobs, a billet plant, but none of that has happened. And last month, it was on the verge of being struck off Companies House. The workers at DL have been sitting at home for months as the company can't afford to buy the materials to fulfil any orders. And there's the forced liquidation of the speciality steels business in the UK. If things are going so well, has the company indicated when they will pay back the £7 million loan to the Scottish Government? And how long will the Scottish Government give the GFG Alliance to deliver before it steps in?
Minister.
We're committed to continue to work with the owners, and it's worth recognising the fact that after many years both those businesses are still operating, the two businesses in Lochaber and indeed the business at DL, and continue to maintain employment in those locations, something that was far from certain previously. So I think what the Scottish Government has done there, working with the owners to keep those plants all employing people locally, is not insignificant and needs to be recognised. We'll continue to work with the owners, and we've got significant contingency plans in place for any eventuality should there be any changes in the circumstances. And as I said to the member, I'll be making a statement on this next week. There will be further opportunity to give more information.
Supplementary, David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. News that the Labour Government have taken control of Liberty Steelworks in Yorkshire was another kick in the teeth for the Scottish workers at Grangemouth. Does the Minister agree with me that it would appear Westminster's support for industrial assets and regional economies depends on which side of the border they are found?
Minister, to the extent that that falls within the broad reach of the question tabled by Mr Rennie.
During the general election last year, the Labour Party made bold and far-reaching commitments around intervening to support Grangemouth's transition in the near term. And so far, unfortunately, these commitments have not materialised in the way that we had all hoped. The UK Government's commitment to deploy £200 million from the National Wealth Fund at Grangemouth in the future is to be welcomed, but I believe that we need to see at-scale intervention and to see it now, as we have seen in other parts of the UK, if we are to avert further industrial and employment loss across the industrial cluster.
Supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm sure that the Minister will welcome the fantastic news on Sunday that Scotland, Glasgow, has won the biggest shipbuilding export order in this country's history, with 5 Type 26 frigates to Norway. But the frustration is that no Scottish steel plate, as it currently stands, will be able to supply to that programme unless we get DL back up and running. So can the Minister give his assurance he will do all he can to get DL back and running so we can get steel plate from Scotland into these fantastic Scottish frigates?
Minister.
I give that assurance. As I said, we've been working extensively with GFG, working on the potential for new orders. I indicated that there were maritime orders in the pipeline, and we'll be able to give more information in the near future. And of course, we'll continue to work with the owners to look for other opportunities to get that plant back up and running. But it's worth recognising that it's only through the work of the Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise that that plant is still capable of fulfilling those orders as it's been supported through this period of time.
And question number 8, Michelle Thompson.
to ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Economy Secretary has had with UK Government ministers regarding the potential impact on the Scottish economy of recent developments with the Grangemouth cluster.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I have very regular engagements with various UK Government ministers, not least yesterday, where I met with Michael Shanks, Energy Minister, and we discussed Grangemouth in particular. The Grangemouth Investor Task Force and Grangemouth Future Industry Board continue to be fruitful vehicles for collaboration between the Energy Secretary and UK ministers. And in May, I asked the Secretary of State for Business and Trade for a meeting to discuss wider issues in the Grangemouth cluster to jointly secure the future of INEOS ONP at Grangemouth. And the Minister of State for Industry responded to me on the 29th of August, and I'm very much looking forward to having a discussion in due course.
Michelle Thompson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, and as she alludes to, there are increasing concerns being raised about contagion as a result of UK Government policies impacting the energy sector. My immediate concerns are the vital chemical cluster around Grangemouth, but also the Fortis pipeline throughput and therefore ultimate viability. It's clear that the energy profit levy is biting investment hard, and I therefore find it staggering that there's no sign of the promised £200 million, paltry though it may be, from the UK Government. So, although discussions have been had, is the Cabinet Secretary any clearer on whether the UK Government plan to follow through on promises made, and therefore on what timescales?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the member raises a number of very, very important issues. So let me start with the wider cluster. We are very conscious of some of the challenges facing the wider chemicals business. I'm currently meeting monthly with the Chief Executive of INEOS ONP UK to provide an opportunity for the business to update me on how global market pressures in the wider energy landscape are impacting operations at Grangemouth. I'm also engaging directly with the UK Government on those matters, raising it at most of my meetings with the Secretary of State for Scotland, and I'm pleased to see that the Scottish Government has been able to make some progress on that issue. The member then talked about the energy profits levy, and she will have seen my comments yesterday on the need for a very urgent replacement of that fiscal regime, and certainly not waiting to 2030. And then lastly, she talked about some of the wider opportunities that are emerging through Project Willow and how we unlock the National Wealth Fund commitment to funding. And that is a particular priority at the moment. We know that some of those opportunities are far advanced. That was the nature of my conversation with Michael Shanks yesterday, to look at how we progress that to secure the funding and get the opportunities in place.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. That concludes the portfolio questions on Deputy First Minister responsibilities, economy and Gaelic. We will move now to the second portfolio of the afternoon on finance and local government. And at question number 1, I call Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of the impact on the public finances of working-age economic inactivity.
Minister Ivan McKee.
The Scottish Government routinely analyses data on economic inactivity, which is produced by the Office for National Statistics. Increasing economic participation can have economic and fiscal benefits, and Scottish Government analysis published last October indicated even a relatively small increase of 0.25 percentage points in the economic activity rate could boost GDP in the long term by around 0.1% or £180 million each year. That's why we are taking action across government to support people to enter, remain and progress in work through devolved employability services, health and work support and various commitments in the programme for government.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Minister for that comprehensive reply. The largest cohort of economically inactive people in Scotland are students, where we have 4-year degrees. Of those seeking work, 72,000 in Scotland received employability support from April 2022 to September 2024. Can the Minister advise which programmes were most successful in returning people to work, what plans there are to roll out such programmes across the country, and the anticipated average annual boost to both individual and the nation's finances of each person who moves out of economic inactivity?
Minister.
Thank the member for that question. As indicated, there's a whole range of programmes in place. As outlined in the programme for government, we have introduced specialist employability support across Scotland to enhance services for disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. And alongside that, we have improved Healthy Working Lives and Working Health Services Scotland to ensure support is available for employees and employers managing health challenges in the workforce. Our devolved employability services, backed by £90 million in 2025-26, play a pivotal role supporting people towards and into sustainable fair work. And it's worth pointing out that the Deputy First Minister is working with Public Health Scotland and a range of private sector employees on some pilot programmes to help to move those individuals back into work as well.
Supplementary, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. A large proportion of the economically inactive are inactive because of ill health, and Scotland has a particularly poor record when it comes to this. So can I ask when the Scottish Government will develop strategies along the preventative health agenda to prevent people falling into ill health in the first place?
Minister.
The data for economic activity in Scotland is 21.9%. And that's a 1.4% reduction since last year. So that number is moving in the right direction, and it's worth pointing out there are a whole range of reasons for that, including students, as Kenny Gibson pointed out, individuals that have retired, individuals that are at home caring for family members, and around a third is due to ill health. The work in the population health framework and other work my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care, is taking forward are very much targeted on how we join up economic activity with the health-related support to support those individuals back into work. And the work that I outlined that the Deputy First Minister was taking forward in conjunction with Public Health Scotland and private sector employees is very much in that space.
Supplementary, Willie Rennie.
But mental health, ADHD and autism contribute a significant proportion of that 20-odd% of the population, of working-age population, who are economically inactive. But the NHS doesn't really seem to have an effective pathway for ADHD and autism, and the waits for mental health are incredibly long. So what discussions is he having with the Health Department to make sure that we can get the system ready so we can get these people back to work so they can make an economic contribution to the country?
Minister. As I indicated, there's a range of activities happening with my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care, working with Economy Portfolio, Public Health Scotland and others to ensure that those services are joined up and are focused on returning people to work as effectively and as efficiently as possible.
Question number 2, Patrick Harvey.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to support local authorities and other public bodies to apply ethical criteria when deciding whether to divest from sectors such as fossil fuels, arms companies and businesses complicit in occupation or war crimes.
Minister.
Local authorities are responsible for their pension investments, and scheme legislation requires them to publish a statement about their investment principles, which should include the extent of their environmental, social and ethical considerations. The Scottish Government has published a business investment framework and guidance on sustainable procurement, and the Scottish National Investment Bank has a responsible and ethical investment policy. There is also guidance for public bodies on carrying out due diligence checks on companies to see if they are associated with human rights abuses. Public bodies are responsible for deciding their actions in individual cases.
Patrick Harvey.
Presiding Officer, I lodged this question before I was aware that there would be a statement from the First Minister on issues which I hope will touch on this question, and I look forward eagerly to hearing the detail of that. But there is legislation, in local government legislation in Scotland, as my colleague Ross Greer drew the Scottish Government's attention to over the recess, which does place restrictions on local authorities applying ethical criteria in the way that I set out. We're all, each of us, free to apply ethical criteria in our choices. Can the Minister agree that there should be no reason in principle why decisions made collectively on behalf of all of us should be restricted in the ethical criteria they apply on the basis of the political views of democratically elected councils?
Minister.
First of all, the member's correct to say that there, of course, will be a statement by the First Minister later this afternoon, and clearly members will have to wait and see what is contained within that statement. But, of course, as he rightly identifies, it does touch on some of these issues. With regards to the principle, well, first of all, it's important to recognise that in this area there is a mixture of devolved and reserved competence, so it's important that to have an effective policy, we're able to unpick that and understand where the extent of devolved competence is, so that we can legislate accordingly. And in principle, I don't disagree with the comments that he's made.
Question number 3, Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what role the Finance Secretary has in authorising any continued expenditure of public bodies that incur substantial legal costs, including those covered by the Clinical Negligence and Other Risks Indemnity Scheme.
Minister.
Public bodies, including those covered by the Clinical Negligence and Other Risks Indemnity Scheme, are responsible for making their own decisions, including those regarding expenditure and ensuring compliance with the requirements of the Scottish Public Finance Manual issued by Scottish ministers. Whether to pursue, defend or concede any legal claim is therefore a decision for the public body in question.
Ash Regan.
Media reports of the NHS Fife Tribunal, which are highlighting escalating legal costs that ultimately will come from Scotland's NHS budget. Scottish Borders Council also recently lost a judicial review over a primary school's failure to provide single-sex toilets for pupils. So can the Minister confirm whether he is going to look into this issue? Because all recipients of public funding, surely, including local authorities, the third sector and public bodies, such as the NHS and its Central Legal Office, should be fully compliant with the Supreme Court judgment in Forum in Scotland versus Scottish ministers. And I'm wondering if the Minister is considering any action that will be taken against those that fall short of the standards of lawful accountability for public finances. I'm sure that is what the public would rightly expect.
Minister.
Well, first of all, it would of course be inappropriate for myself or Scottish Government ministers to intervene in or comment on ongoing legal cases, and that maintains the independence of the legal process. And as the members are aware, the scheme that we're referring to is set up to share risk across a whole range of organisations to minimise the impact from any specific case. It's important to note that the Scottish Government do not provide public authorities with legal advice, and it's up to each public authority to take their own independent legal advice. Also important to recognise that the membership of the scheme is mandatory for all NHS Scotland health boards, and the cost of the majority of NHS Scotland's legal cases are met by the scheme.
Question number 4, David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is working with local authorities to deliver transformation programmes and accelerate any reforms needed to achieve financial sustainability and ensure that local services are fit for the future.
Minister.
Alongside record funding, our public service reform strategy published in June sets out how we are working with local government on programmes such as whole family support and Fairer Futures partnerships to accelerate change, delivering services that are preventative, better joined up and more efficient. By tackling systemic barriers and empowering local leadership, we will ensure services remain sustainable and fit for the future.
David Torrance.
Can the Minister provide reassurance that the Scottish Government will continue to work constructively with councils like Fife, which serves my constituency, to support innovation, protect frontline services and ensure that communities such as Kirkcaldy benefit from sustainable, modernised local services?
Minister.
Yes, I can categorically offer that reassurance, and along with the record funding settlement and early and meaningful budget engagement, the Scottish Government will continue to work in partnership with COSLA and individual local authorities such as Fife around how to ensure we are providing sustainable, people-centred services. We will also continue to engage constructively with the UK Government to highlight the importance of sustainable public services to ensure the people of Scotland continue to receive the high-quality public services they expect and deserve.
Supplementary, Craig Hoy.
Deputy Presiding Officer, the Minister will be aware that SNP-run Dumfries and Galloway Council has withdrawn some key subsidised bus services as a result of what it describes as funding constraints following a widespread review of the region's bus network. From Sanquhar to Langham, this is causing huge difficulty and distress for residents, both young and old. Will the Scottish Government, now as it prepares its next budget, commit to a full and fair funding formula for Scotland's rural councils and ensure that it properly funds Scotland's at-risk rural bus network?
Minister.
Well, of course, those decisions are for local authorities, but it's worth pointing out that the Scottish Government is providing record funding to local government in the current financial year. Discussions are underway. Indeed, my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, is undertaking budget discussions at the moment to make sure we continue to offer ever-increasing amounts of funding to local government. The funding formula, of course, is a matter for COSLA, who, in conjunction with 32 local authorities, decide how best to allocate that funding across the country.
A supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I wonder if the Minister is open to the offer made by the UK Government to work in collaboration to strengthen public procurement rules, guidance and even legislation to ensure that local authorities, Scottish Government, can drive greater value from procurement into local supply chains and ensure we get better value to the Scottish economy as a result.
Minister.
We're always in the business of looking for opportunities to further improve in this area, but it's worth recognising when you look at the specifics of what the UK Government is bringing forward. It's very much in the space of trying to catch up with where the Scottish Government already is in terms of procurement rules and procurement practice. And if you look at the data on that, 46% of public procurement spend in Scotland is with SMEs, compared to around 25% south of the border. So we've made significant progress in this area in Scotland and continue to do so. Indeed, I met just with FSB just in the last couple of weeks to talk about what else we can do. But as I say, it's very much a question of the UK Government running to catch up with where Scotland already is.
Question number 5, Maggie Chapman.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what support it can provide to local authorities to help ensure that all residents across the North East can access local council services, including help when things go wrong, in person as well as online.
Minister.
In 25-26, North East Scotland local authorities will receive over £1.8 billion to fund local services, which equates to an extra £120 million, or 7%, to support vital day-to-day services compared to the previous years. Local authorities are, of course, independent corporate bodies with their own powers and responsibilities. However, the Scottish Government will continue to work in partnership with COSLA and individual local authorities to ensure that the people of Scotland continue to receive high-quality public services they expect and deserve.
Maggie Chapman.
Dundee Pensioners Forum and other organisations are calling for the re-establishment of face-to-face access to local council officers. Limited access has curtailed the community's opportunities to address potentially complex issues like those relating to RAC and those associated with maintenance of homes and the surrounding environment. It also excludes particularly those with limited IT access or skills. How will the Scottish Government work with councils to enhance this aspect of community engagement to ensure that all residents, regardless of digital access or skills, can get support when they need it?
Minister.
I'm not aware of the specific situation she's referring to in Dundee, but of course the Scottish Government, through our digital strategy, is very focused on digital inclusion and ensuring that everybody is able to enjoy service provision through digital services, and is to be included in that process. But of course, where there are reasons where that is not possible, then of course public bodies should continue to provide services on a face-to-face basis for those where that is most appropriate. But as I say, the specific situation in Dundee is a matter for the Council there.
Question number 6, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how much funding it's allocated to Eastern Bartonshire Council to help meet any additional costs of providing social care services for an ageing population.
Minister.
Eastern Bartonshire Council will receive revenue funding of £280.6 million in 2025-26 as a result of the Scottish Budget. As a democratically elected body, it is for the Council to determine how to allocate that funding, including funding for social care services based on local needs and priorities. We appreciate the pressures facing health and social care and local government, and that's why we provided record funding for both in 2025-26, including almost £2.2 billion of investment for social care and integration.
Rhona Mackay.
I thank the Minister for that answer. With nearly 18,000 people in Strathkelvin and Bearsden, my constituency, now over state pension age, and estimates showing 15% of local pensioners are living in poverty, with more than 1.4 million in pension credit going unclaimed every year, does the Minister agree with me that raising awareness of poverty-reducing benefits is crucial, as is high-quality, sustainable social care?
Minister.
Yes, I do agree with the member, and that's why we have a benefit take-up strategy, of which there is no UK government equivalent, and we are taking steps to tackle barriers to take up and putting money in the pockets of those who need it most. We have allocated £16.9 million in 2025-26 to fund advice services, including Citizens Advice Scotland's Money Talk team, which supported over 12,000 older people last year. Similarly, it is likely that we will use all social care at home. Similarly, it is likely that we will all use social care at some point in our lives, and improving the quality, standards and consistency of care for people is absolutely necessary.
Supplementary, Pam Gozo.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Eastern Berkshire Health and Social Care Partnership has highlighted in its 2025 to 2030 strategic plan that there is a need to move away from traditional services models to a whole-person and community approaches due to financial challenges and increasing demand. In April, council tax for Eastern Berkshire residents rose by 13%, and the people I spoke to on the doors this summer said they are not receiving value for money. Therefore, what is the Minister's response to all of those who are paying more but risk receiving less when it comes to social care?
Minister.
Well, first of all, obviously the decisions on that are decided locally, and as I've indicated, there is record funding going into the system across local government and social care. But I think the important point that she made in the first part of her question around how most effectively to deliver those services is a really important one, and it gets to the heart of the work we're taking forward in the public service reform strategy, building on the Christie principles to focus on prevention, ensure that the money is most effectively directed to the front line, and to better integrate up public services so that her constituents and indeed others right across the country receive the best possible service they can from local government.
Question number 7, Alec Riley.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what steps it's taking to encourage and support local authorities to empower and enable people and communities to have a greater say over the delivery of local public services.
Minister.
Through our commitment, joint commitment with COSLA to the Democracy Matters process, we are designing new community decision-making arrangements. This aims to increase participation and enhance the role of communities in local service delivery. We are also providing funding for the new City Citizens Assembly pilot in Mr O'Reilly's constituency, led by the Electoral Reform Society and Fife Council, to enable people to have a greater influence over the future of Scotland's newest city. This is alongside support for local authorities to mainstream participation through the delivery of participatory budgeting and a recent review of the Community Empowerment Act. And I'll just correct myself, of course, it's in Ms Somerville's constituency, and Mr O'Reilly is a regional member.
Alec Riley.
Presiding Officer, back in 2011, the SNP government published the Christie Report. The Christie Report's main recommendations focused on reforming public services in Scotland through empowerment, collaboration, prevention and performance-focused efficiency. It recommended empowering individuals and communities in service design, promoting integrated services through partnerships, prioritising preventative measures and holding services accountable for improving outcomes and value for money. Some 14 years later, I would have to say, in my opinion, very little of what the Christie Report set out has actually been achieved. Indeed, I would argue the centralisation of public services over that period is a complete contradiction to what the Christie Report set out. Will the Minister and does the Government accept that they have failed to implement Christie, and therefore will they look at how we genuinely empower local authorities, taking power out of this place into local authorities so that they can take that power into communities? That's what's failed.
Minister.
Well, I think I agree with the first part of the member's question, but not the second part. The Christie principles are absolutely central to the work that this government is taking forward, and I'm sure the member have read in great detail the public service reform strategy that we published in June, which contained many examples of where those principles had been very effectively applied across a whole range of policy areas, around about prevention, around about empowerment, around about integration and more effective and efficient service delivery. And we continue on that journey in the public service reform strategy. It gives us a very clear direction through its 18 work streams as to how we do that. And as I've already indicated, the Democracy Matters work that the Government is taking forward in collaboration with local authority partners in COSLA about how we take that empowerment and service design agenda down to community level, so to make that as local as possible is hugely important. And I've already indicated the work on the Citizens' Assembly we're taking forward in Dunfermline, funded by the Scottish Government, is very much part of that work as well. But I'm always happy to engage with any member that wants to contribute to taking forward this agenda.
I'm just keen to squeeze in the last question. Question number 8, Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government for what reason it is reportedly spending over £1 million every week on agency staff, in light of it having announced plans to reduce corporate costs.
Minister.
In support of the budget and wider public service reform agenda, the Scottish Government is proactively addressing the need to control workforce size to remain fiscally sustainable. While the core Scottish Government, within the core Scottish Government, the number of contingent workers, what he's referring to, is now 47% lower than in March 2022. The use of contingent workers has been in decline to support a more managed approach to workforce deployment and reduce cost. Employing temporary and agency workers provide the flexibility required to meet business needs and access specialists and other skills quickly and adapt to our need for resource is short-term, and is very, very often the most cost-effective way of providing those services, rather than employing someone full-time where the services may only be required for a short period of time.
Alexander Stewart.
I thank the Minister for that response. Does the Minister accept that every pound spent on agency staff bureaucracy is a pound taken away from our schools, our hospitals, our local council services, which are already on their knees because of this Government's mismanagement?
Minister.
Well, of course, as aware, the Scottish Government works within a fixed budget and balances its budget every single year. And the whole point of the public service reform agenda is to continue to move resources from the corporate functions and deploy them in exactly the way he's talking about in the front line. The strategy contains a number of examples where we've successfully done that, and the example I just cited, where the number of contingent workers is now 47% lower than it was 3 years ago, is another example of that. We'll continue to deliver on that agenda to free up those resources and make sure they're deployed effectively in an integrated way on the front line.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes portfolio questions on finance and local government. There will be a short pause before we move on to the next item of business. Thank you.